Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore, Baltimore, Baltimore.
Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. My name is Tom Gauker, and I am your host of this awesome show. And if you're catching up with us for the first time, please subscribe and share the link with your friends. And if you're a repeat listener, then you know that the summer of 2021 was the Hey Baltimore series, where we laser focused our attention on the 5-star talents that we have here in Baltimore. Episode 5 of the series, we spent a half hour with a rising star called Clarence Ward III and the DAT Feel Good Band. I didn't realize it at the time, but that audio of that show would turn into their first album. And if you want to check out episode 223, you get a taste of the album called Clarence Ward III and the DAT Feel Good live at the Blue House. The album was released June 14th, 2021 on the Ward's Way Music and Entertainment record label. That Feel Good is a Clarence Ward brand that he's focused soul sounds of the 90s and the neo-soul jazz explosion that collided in the early 2000s. Whenever they're playing, it's guaranteed to that feel good. This is the first of many projects that Clarence Ward has in his arsenal. And before we get into the interview, let's listen to a sample of a Monday jam at the Terra Cafe located in Baltimore, Maryland. Clarence Ward has a Monday night residency there, and it is the hottest jam in the city every Monday night. Clarence Ward III, welcome to Something Came from Baltimore.
Hey, thanks for having me.
The last time we talked was just about a month ago, and we were doing the Hey Baltimore series, and I had to have you as one of my people, and you told me you were coming out with an album, and you told me you wouldn't forget me, you wouldn't do an Emmanuel Wilkins, and we would talk about for the record, he texted me back, but it was just late. So we have this album, and what was great about this is that when I was, doing research on you, I was struck on this performance. It's that live at the Blue House with That Feel Good. And I didn't know that you were going to use this for your album. So how did that all come about?
Actually, before the pandemic started, I'd already started recording the official That Feel Good album. And Maryland got shut down on the 15th. That was the day that I found my father dead in his house. That was crazy. It was the 16th. His birthday is the 15th. So I remember I actually called him on his birthday. Couldn't get through to him. But I was in the studio that day. That was our third session recording the main album, which will probably be coming out later in the year. But that was at the very beginning. Throughout pandemic, mostly it was hard for me to play because, he passed away. I found him in his house. I was in a musical rut at that point. I was depressed throughout the majority of the year. And that I played a few times, and throughout the from the pandemic on to before that performance, I played, still at least once or twice a month on gigs, but nothing like it was prior, 5-6 days a week I was performing. And during those times, I never felt like myself. When I performed, I got through the gigs, to other people, they sound good. But when I listen back, to me, it wasn't me completely. And by the time I got to that gig, when I listened back, was probably the first time I felt like almost myself again. And because of that, I just decided, I think this needs to be, I want to put out this as a live album. This will come out before the main album. So that's where it was. It was more about the way that I felt, because musically, I felt I just wasn't there, throughout the year last year after my father's passing. I would sit days, every day, my home was next to me, both of them. I'd pick them up, try to blow on them and get my juices flowing. And it just wasn't there. Honestly, I think I'm just getting over my father. The 1 year anniversary of his death was in March. And, a month ago, I actually decided to get the things out of his apartment. His stuff was still there the entire year. That's how much it was bothering me.
That story haunts me because you had told me that before, and you have so much stuff going on. You're working on this. You had the COVID. You had your father, and then you just had a child,
and then a baby.
Yeah,
yeah. See, that was the crazy part, because my wife told me a week before I found my father dead that she was pregnant. So it was just like, I was paranoid, because usually when somebody's pregnant, it seems like somebody dies. So I was paranoid, wondering, oh, man, somebody might pass away around, and it was, yeah.
That's funny, because I was going to ask you, like, I always was told, like, when in a family, if someone dies, someone is born, and that spirit of that person is more or less transferred into, the newborn to keep you've heard this before too, right?
Yep.
So you're going to look at your daughter all through life and realize that your dad's close by.
Oh yeah.
How cool is that?
I do that a lot. Yeah, it's cool, and it's funny. She has certain mannerisms of him that I see, and it's crazy. Yeah.
What I liked about this album, the video is a great compliment to all these songs, and how does someone get to watch these songs? Because now it's not on YouTube anymore.
Yeah. Within the next month, we're going to put them back up, and I think the plan is to put them up on Vimeo and on a website. But I got to talk with the team and figure out what the plan is completely, because you're like the third or fourth person that asked about the video.
Yeah. It sold me. It sold me on you, because I can see your heart and soul. It was coming through, and you were on fire. And if that was your bad day, can you imagine what your good days are?
Yeah, man, it was crazy. Like I said, in the moment, I'm not sure if they ever even caught it. A couple of tears might have dropped out of my eyes during that performance. It was just the way that it felt emotionally. It all felt there. And I just, at that point, like I said, when I listened back, my guy Aaron, my keyboardist, he said it too, man. This might need to be the live album. We still gonna put out the main album. I haven't really done any heavy touring since probably the Legacy gig, and that's been about 10, 11 years now. I've gigged, but nothing, no 2-3 weeks, month type tours. So that's allotted me a good chance to help build the family as well as build the scene. That was the main thing I wanted to do. If I can't do nothing else in this world, musically, I want to help build the scene in Baltimore, man. We have some of the greatest musicians walking the earth.
Yep.
Some of the greatest musicians walking the earth on more than one instrument.
Yeah.
Historically, we had one of the greatest scenes. And I feel like with all the cats that we have, we shouldn't have to go to New York. And that's how I got to that feel good.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that feel good it mixes a lot of the greatest music that I love. I grew up. I'm born in the '80s, but I'm raised on '90s R&B, hip hop.
Yeah.
Some of the backbeats and feel that you get from that feel good is the feel of that '90s feeling that you used to get. The little love songs that always played on the radio and stuff like that. I love that. I love that type of stuff growing up. And jazz is what I was bred in. And I'm still able to get my jazz chops off and still have something that the crowd can feel and relate to.
I like what you're saying about that feel good. You're creating a brand, an image. Like when people hear that feel good, they know what they're going to get. And
exactly.
I like that, because you have the ability to stretch out wherever you want to go as a person, and that feel good is kind of its own thing. which reminds
Yep.
me of exactly what I heard you say in one of the intros. I think it got scrubbed off about your love for Roy Hargrove. And
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I feel like, you know, you learned from, like, I don't know, there was a boom with jazz right at that time period when he came out, and every album was completely
Late
different.
80s, early 90s.
And then bang, he's like, okay, I'm going to incorporate hip hop, and he brought every single like star legend now, you know, together, and as a team they created this amazing music. I think it's a blueprint for the future. I said, oh, this is what jazz is going to be. This is jazz right now.
Yeah, it is. You know, in the end, music has to grow. You know, it's hard because for me, I love to pay homage to the past, but we do have to grow the music and we do have to move forward. And in that, you know, like at sessions a lot of times now, and I tend to try to play some of the guys that I grew up on music: Roy Hargrove, Nicholas Payton, Christian McBride. Those are a lot of my favorites during the time. We have to start making new standards. You know, we have to add new standards to the repertoire of the old standards.
Yep.
You know, a lot of people fuss about, you know, we got to play the same music from the 40s and 50s. No, you don't.
No.
But we can manipulate the music in a way, you know, that it feeds everybody. You know, and I feel like with that Feel Good, I was able to do that.
Definitely.
You know, when you look at Listen to Misty, you know, everybody loves the jazz standard Misty. You know, I'm able to play the standard, but put a little different flavor on it. That's it, and that's that Feel Good.
Where the Saints Come Marching In is definitely an example of you taking something old, taking a new spin on it. I like the gospel feel in the background, and you have a very current New Orleans kind of slant to it, along with, is that you doing Louis Armstrong?
Oh yeah.
Wow, that's a dead-on impression almost. Well, not, you know.
Oh,
homage.
thanks a lot, man. I feel it's as good as it can get, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you, it was crazy on that performance. You know, that was an hour and some change. The biggest problem that I thought that I would have is what I had, and what most musicians are probably realizing coming out of pandemic is that, yeah, some of your chops will still be there, but the biggest problem will be endurance. How long you can do what you do. Before pandemic, for 4 hours, I can play a gig with a couple breaks and still be completely strong, not winded and tired. Man, by the end of that gig, I was beat.
Yeah.
I was physically beat.
Oh, when the Saints go marching in. Oh, when the Saints go marching in. All I want to be in that number. Yeah.
Funn's Funk, and that is one funky song. But you had a mentor, Charles Funn.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah,
must be
yeah.
a tribute to him, and you want to tell a little more about him?
Oh yeah, well, Baltimore City school teacher. He retired actually last year in the middle of the pandemic. It was, he's been there forever, so it's time. It was his time. But when I got to Dunbar, I got transferred to Dunbar High School with 2 months left in my freshman year of high school. I went to Lake Clifton in the '90s, late '90s, mid to late, and at that time that was like the worst high school in the world. And got into some stuff over there. And in order for me, my aunt, she's my saving grace. Without her, there's no me. There's no me. I would never meet Funn, and I wouldn't be anything without her because she fought for me to get into Dunbar. My old he was my old gym teacher and a football coach of mine was teaching at Dunbar at the time, and she really wanted to get me out of that school. She got me over there. The gym coach vouched for me. The principal, she was a nice lady. Everybody spoke up for me to try to get me in there. And then in the end, it boiled down to Mr. Funn. And my aunt told him that, if you get him in, he can play an instrument. He played flute. He plays flute, and I haven't played flute since 3rd grade. So it was just like, that's not what I want. I didn't want to get into the school to be playing some flute. But whatever it took to get in there, and he was like, "Oh, he plays flute? All right, well, he'll be playing saxophone in a week." And he said, "I'll take him." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, all right." I get in there and I start playing flute. And after a week of playing flute, he puts me on the alto saxophone.
Wow.
And after about a month on alto saxophone, I transcribed my first solo jazz. So it was Jesse Davis solo on Moten Swing. From what album was it? It was a movie that came out in the mid '90s with all the cats: Joshua Redman, Handy, Christian McBride, Nick Payton, Mark Whitfield. I think Ron Carter was on there with a duet. But the song was Moten Swing. And James Carter, he was on that as well. Man, I transcribed that solo, and I remember him walking, and he came in the very next, actually, he started a program at Dunbar in which, under a summer program called Youth Works, where students could get paid, through the city for showing up, practicing, and performing in Baltimore City. So I was a part of the first group of that summer program. And during that summer program was when I, had time to sit around and transcribe the solo. And I remember bringing that in, and I played it, and he looked at me. I remember the gaze in his eyes, man. And he was just like, man, he just made it bad for all of y'all. For me, I was only in the band a couple months, so it was like, man, come on, man, this new guy come in here. He doesn't really play an instrument. He's doing this. And I remember after that, he knew that before music, growing up, I did martial arts and football for the majority of my life. So the football coach, which is the varsity football coach, I know him from the past, and he wanted me to play varsity that year, and I'm ready to play football. The last thing I'm ever thinking about is playing an instrument. I mean, the flute got me into the school, even though I hadn't touched it since the 3rd grade. But hey, he said, man, listen, if you stick with me, this was by the end of the summer program. He said, if you stick with me, I can guarantee you a free ride to college. But you really got to stick with me. You really can't. It's gonna be hard for you to do football and music. Realistically, because I'm starting fresh, and I understood it, and I stuck with him. And he's one of the adults in my life that I feel has never lied to me. And he's always been honest when he needs. He's given me tough love when needed, and I love him for that. He's a second father, and to this day, if I need him and I call him, he'll be there. Yeah, man. I love that man to death. And I owe him everything. I owe him everything.
Crazy.
But back to the song. The way the song is written is based off a formula he used to use for us in high school. which is 1 flat 3rd 5. We wrote a lot of songs using that formula, 1 flat 3rd 5 and stuff like that. And when I wrote the song, you know, stylistically we would play a lot of jazz and jazz funk because he would want to, you know, play the stuff that would get, you know, the kids into the music. Because coming in, you know, most kids aren't into jazz, you know, so, and formula wise, that was his formula that I used to write this song. And when I put that funk joint, when I put the funk feel behind it, you know, I vision it's a certain way he dances on funk songs. So I see him dancing on his semi James Brown slide across the floor, man. It's just, and man, like I say, I owe him everything. And like I said, when I play this, I see him dancing. I couldn't help but name it after him.
The Thank You for the Tears is the intro. You were, I think you removed it, but you said this goes out to my mom. And so there's a contradiction for Thank You for the Tears. I thought there has to be a story behind that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up Baltimore City, 80s. If you were an 80s baby in my hood, you know, everybody went through roughly the same thing. It was a drug pandemic, you know, throughout the 80s and 90s in the Black community in my community and neighborhood. And everybody was a part of it at some point. Everybody had family members that were a part of it. And I was just so happened to be one of them. You know, I'm the oldest of 3. And, you know, life just really wasn't that easy for me or any of us growing up. It was a little easier for my brother and sister because I took a lot of the brunt of the bad part of life. But, you know, my mother and I, we went through a lot growing up. And throughout life, you know, we used to have issues up until roughly until I turned 18, 19 years old. You know, things started to smooth out a little more. I think maybe because I always thought maybe because I was grown and I didn't have to take certain things anymore. But in the end, life wasn't easy for her. And sometimes when people go through things in life, you know, they don't know how to react and deal with certain situations. In the end, my mom put me through a lot growing up, but the things that she put me through is the only reason I feel I can express the way that I do musically, you know, the way that I do. I don't really speak about, I'm not really that much of a talker unless I'm amongst friends and we're, you know, having fun. But outside of that, I can tend to be quiet. I'm an observer. And when it comes to expressing my emotions outwardly, speaking about it, that's not something that I often do. But when I perform, I get to express myself every time I perform, you know. And well, with that song in the end, it was just a tribute to my mother. I was just thanking her for the tears many of the tears that I've had growing up, good or bad, they were all worth it. now, because I feel that's the reason I'm able to express myself the way I do emotionally through the music.
It's interesting now that you're older, you can look back and say, you know, she did the best that she could as she was, as opposed to why, or
yeah.
you know.
But I spent many years saying why, you know, and then I talk to family members, and a lot of people explain a lot of things she's been through, and I understand it, you know. But you know, that was my life, and those were the cards I was dealt, and which in life, depending on the cards you dealt, it makes things a lot harder in life.
Definitely.
You know, when you start to think about, part of the reason I didn't put out an album, you know, the struggles of life, you know, a lot of times it was only, I had to always take care of me. You know, I left college to go into the military so I could send money home to my mother, brother, and sister. That was the only reason I really went in. The guy said I can go in, I could travel the world playing jazz, and I can take care of my family. That's all I needed to hear.
Yeah, how about
that? That's what I tried to do. But I went in full-time Army. I didn't understand the difference between the two bands. I saw the Navy band. I think they're the Commodores. There was a tenor saxophone player, a young Hispanic tenor saxophone player named Luis Hernandez. At that time, I might have been maybe 17 or 18 when I saw him play. And I'm like, this brother is killing. And I remember talking to him. He told me about the military bands. And I'm like, man, that's what's up. I think I might do it. My grandfather was in the Army, so I wasn't going to go Navy. I'd go Army. But I ended up going in regular Army. I still went in as an Army saxophonist, Otulema, but I didn't apply for the special band. But regular Army, after a while, it just really wasn't for me. You know, what I thought I was getting into really necessarily wasn't. The physical aspect, that wasn't an issue. It was just more of the play. You know, I went through a lot in the military, you know. But again, even then, the things I went through there, everything that I go through has shaped me to be the cat that I am now.
Sure.
You know, and I'm able to express it. I mean, every time I play, I get to express all the negatives and the good that I've been through in life.
It's Clarence Ward III, and That Feel Good. The album is called Live at the Blue House. It came out on June 14th. I thank you very much for joining me today on Something Came from Baltimore.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate you, and I hope to do this again soon.
I hope you enjoyed Something Came from Baltimore today with our guest, Clarence Ward III. Remember his name along with That Feel Good. Please subscribe to Something Came from Baltimore and then play the show to get our numbers up. Subscribe and be a part of that Be More music scene.